What if our entire way of thinking about global power, who's on top, who's in charge, is just wrong? What if the very rules we use to measure a nation's strength are fundamentally broken? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive right into that fascinating and, frankly, world-changing idea.
So, let's just start with a basic question. When you think of a powerful country, what immediately pops into your head? How are we actually supposed to measure that kind of strength?
I bet your mind goes to the usual suspects, right? A giant military, a massive economy, controlling a huge chunk of land, and having tons of natural resources. For centuries, yeah, these have been the go-to metrics.
And look, for most of human history, that was a pretty solid way to look at it. But here's the twist. The central argument we're exploring today is that this old logic, it's becoming dangerously out of touch with the world we actually live in.
So, to really get a handle on where we are now, we first have to be super clear on what the old rules of the game actually were. Let's look at the old playbook.
The old concept was honestly beautifully simple. Power was a possession. It was something you could hold in your hands, something you could count, like land or gold or barrels of oil. Your political authority was a direct result of how much stuff you controlled. It was simple. More stuff meant more power. End of story.
And this quote from the source material just nails it. This thinking wasn't some abstract theory. It was the engine that drove history. It built empires and sparked revolutions. But that last part, it no longer explains the world we inhabit. That's the real bombshell.
Okay, so if the old rulebook is officially obsolete, what's replaced it? This brings us to the new reality of how power is distributed today. The single biggest shift is this. Power has gone from being concentrated to being distributed. It isn't just sitting in one nation's capital anymore. Instead, it's woven into the very fabric of our globalized world, spread out across all these incredibly complex, interlocking systems.
And these are the systems we're talking about. I mean, just think about it for a second. A country can have the world's most powerful army, but if it gets cut off from global financial markets, or if its supply chain for microchips gets snapped, how powerful is it really? Real influence now flows through these intricate networks.
This chart really lays out the huge mental leap we need to make. We're not talking about possession anymore. We're talking about distribution. We're moving away from brute dominance and towards subtle influence. And, this is the big one, we're shifting from the old dream of total control to the new reality of inescapable interdependence.
Right, but this new world of interdependence leads to some really strange, kind of backward outcomes. And this brings us to what we can call the interdependence paradox. So check this out, because this is crucial. Under the old rules, growing your economy made you more powerful and more independent. Simple. But now, the very act of growing, of building new factories, of innovating new tech, it actually makes a nation more dependent on global systems. You need foreign capital, you need parts from all over the world, you need global customers. So growth and vulnerability now actually go hand in hand. It's a total paradox.
And that just changes everything about how we see global competition. You know that story we always hear about one great power rising to just take the place of another one that's falling? It's too simple. In a world this tangled up, there are no clean breaks, no simple handovers. Everyone is stuck together.
Okay, I can hear you thinking. If we're all so interconnected and everything depends on everything else, why does the world so often feel like it's about to fly apart at the seams?
Exactly. It's a fair question. Why do we still have wars? Why do countries hit each other with sanctions? If my economy's health depends on yours, why would I ever risk blowing things up? It seems to completely defy the logic we've just laid out.
Well, the answer seems to lie in this fundamental mismatch. Our biggest systems, our financial markets, our climate, our technology like AI, they are global. They're shared. They're interdependent. But the way we govern ourselves, our political authority, is still stuck at the national level. It's all about borders and elections and armies. It's competitive by its very nature. And it's this tension, this huge gap between our global problems and our national solutions, that's where all the conflict comes from.
So where does all this leave us? If the old measuring sticks for power are broken, we desperately need a whole new way to think about what influence even means in the 21st century.
And this right here, this is the great reframing. For the last 100 years, the big question has always been, who's going to dominate the world? But what if that's just the wrong question now? Maybe the most important, the most urgent question for our time is this:
Who has the ability to keep our fragile, shared systems from collapsing when they're under incredible stress?
This quote is really the key takeaway of this whole explainer. In this new world, real influence might not come from being the biggest dog in the fight. It might actually come from being the most stable, the most predictable, the most reliable player in the game. The one that everyone, even your rivals, can count on to keep things from falling apart.
And that brings us to one final thought for you to chew on. As we face these massive shared risks, things like climate change or future pandemics or the rise of AI, what does power really even mean? Is it the nation with the most aircraft carriers? Or is it the one that acts as the stable bedrock, the one that keeps our deeply interconnected world from shattering into a million pieces?